The second, hold on. Sorry about that. I've represented the 2nd Congressional District of Connecticut in the U.S. House of Representatives since his election in 2006. As a member of the House Education and Labor Committee, he serves on the Health, Employment, Labor Pension Subcommittee, as well as the Higher Education and Workforce Training Subcommittee. We are honored to have him here today with us to share news about library funding from Washington. Thanks, Congressman Courtney.
Great. Well, thank you, Jason, for the invitation, first of all, to be here today and the kind introduction. But you left out the most important part, which I used to be Ellen Paul's boss a number of years ago when I was first elected, and she was really part of the first group that we assembled, which a lot of people think, when you get elected to Congress, you sort of have a staff in a box, which you don't. You have to go out and find people. And I was very lucky to have Ellen, who also had worked on a lot of the campaigns up at the University of Connecticut, get us off to a good start. And again, I'm very excited to see the great work that she's continuing to do for our state. Again, just a keynote address sounds pretty dramatic and informal. I probably just wanted to share a couple of thoughts in terms of some issues which hopefully you'll find of interest here today. And as you pointed out, Jason, I do sit on the Education and Labor Committee. One issue which is obviously in today's front headlines with more initiatives being made by the Biden administration on student loan forgiveness for people who have been ripped off at the Corinthian College for-profit school fraud schemes that were there. But one issue which actually goes back to when I literally as a freshman was the enactment of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which in terms of the language of the law definitely covers every librarian that from coast to coast. But it's been a troubled program, and I actually think Secretary Cardona is doing really good work in terms of trying to untangle, some of the mess that was created by his predecessor, Betsy DeVos, who was completely hostile to both philosophically and administratively to making that program work. Again, as many of you know, Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program was set up to allow people who are in the public sector, occupations, teaching, librarians, police, fire, healthcare, et cetera, who have student loans who are current with their payments after 10 years to then apply to the Department of Education for full discharge on the balance. And the bill was signed into law by George Bush in 2007. The first cohort of eligible borrowers, obviously kicked in 2017. And what happened at that point, it coincided with the DeVos, control of the Department of Education, who absolutely mangled the intent and letter of the law by basically denying 98% of the borrowers who applied for discharge. There were lawsuits, there were hearings in Congress, and then obviously the President Biden was elected and Cardona took over, who again hails from Connecticut. We're all very proud of him to be in that position. And in talking to him a number of times, I mean, he knew that student loans was part of his portfolio as Secretary of Education. He had no idea what a hot mess had been left behind to him. So, one of their initiatives, and very good initiatives, that's the department is doing, is last October, they set up a waiver program for people to basically get reset into the public service loan forgiveness. People who, in some instances, had already done their 10 years of payments or thought they did, and were disqualified from just a whole variety of Mickey Mouse reasons by the prior administration. It basically allows people who maybe during that 10 years of loan payments were in a period of forbearance for either military service or unemployment. Some of the provisions which allowed people to go into forbearance or were into income-based repayment, which allowed them to qualify for lower monthly payments, but which the DeVos administration were treating as non-qualifying monthly payments in the PSLF program. Again, what Cardona's waiver program does is allow all of those, various scenarios to basically get treated as qualifying payments. And, for a lot of people, that has made a huge difference in terms of them getting what the law requires, which is a full discharge. I ran into a teacher down in Groton who, had basically given up, in terms of trying to get her application for discharge through. She did retry with the waiver program. And I literally ran into her a few days after she had received the discharge notice that $50,000 of student loan debt had been forgiven. And I mean, she was almost like, still in a state of shock and emotion, that her life had changed so dramatically. What we have found in our office and a lot of my colleagues in Washington is that unfortunately the awareness level about this waiver opportunity is very low. And joining us this evening is Julia McGrath from my office, who is in our district office in Norwich, who's been handling this issue, and she just sent over to Ellen. I believe, hopefully you got it. We actually had a webinar with the Department of Education and the Public Service Loan Coalition about 3 or 4 weeks ago, where basically they spent an hour, in very plain English with lots of good graphics and links to the process that people can use to, again, get the relief which the law provides for. And, this was done with the Connecticut Nonprofit Coalition, because again, nonprofit, people who are employed by nonprofits are also eligible for public service loan forgiveness. We have been talking to the Connecticut Education Association, AFT, the AFT local here in Connecticut, nurses unions, nurses associations, the Connecticut Hospital. I mean, none of them frankly knew a thing about this waiver program. And so anyway, I'm offering that to Ellen to share with all of you. And again, it's a really nice, easy to understand webinar that hopefully people can use. Again, the waiver program terminates in October, so it is actually time limited, at least at this point. A number of us have actually introduced legislation to just push that waiver cutoff out indefinitely, because frankly what Cardona set up is really just basically reflective of what was the intent of the law, which is that after 10 years, as long as you're in good graces as far as your loan, you're not in default, then you should be eligible for full discharge. You've done your public service, you've stayed in good graces with your loan servicer and loan borrower, and you should get full discharge. Obviously there's a lot of noise going on right now about whether the president is going to implement some kind of across the board loan forgiveness. I think the Washington Post reported recently that the rumor mill, because really that's all it is still at this point, is that they're looking at $10,000 of loan forgiveness, and it would be there would be a means test for individuals whose annual income is $150,000 a year or less, and double that for couples. That's a pretty generous income guideline. But frankly, this is a decision that's really literally in the Oval Office in the White House, and whether or not that actually even happens or not, I don't have any inside skinny I can share with people here this evening. But what I can tell you is that the PSLF program is open for business. And again, I think the secretary, we have some numbers in terms of what they've already discharged since they set this up, and it's in the tens of millions of dollars for folks who are in your sector. And Julia, whose contact info we'll share with Ellen, if people have follow-up questions after this evening, we're more than happy to respond to that and share that with you. A couple other things in terms of just actually thought I saw, yeah, I do see Margaret Kahn from Coventry, who's doing a great job at the Coventry Library there. A couple weeks ago, we did an American Rescue Plan tour in Coventry to talk about, again, some of the allocations that the town made with the direct funding that came from Washington to local communities like Coventry. And we visited, again, the areas of the library that are somewhat challenged right now in terms of some, water flooding over the time. And again, it was great to see that the ARP money was set aside by the town to help, make some of those, infrastructure repairs at the library there. Our office tries to keep a tally of the 63 towns that are in the 2nd Congressional District to sort of see how many of them have actually devoted funds to their local libraries. Our count right now is up to 16. Again, towns are not obligated to notify members of Congress, about how they're spending their ARP money. So we have to be kind of nosy about trying to, find out what they're doing with the money. But again, I would just share with all of you that, there is no question that the Department of Treasury has ruled clearly that, library upgrades, library repairs, library, HVAC systems. I mean, those are all totally permitted uses under the American Rescue Plan. And people, in my opinion, should not be bashful about picking up the phone and asking your mayor or your first select person, or council person about, because again, the cutoff, as I think many of you probably know, for obligating ARP money is 2024. So a lot of towns still have unspent funding that's out there. And, as Margaret can attest, I mean, the Coventry Library did a great job of convincing the council that, that was a really smart priority for them to invest in. The other sort of, workhorse program for libraries is the Institute for Museum and Library Services, the IMLS program, which I think many of you know. That's a recurring funding that's part of the, regular appropriations. We now are very blessed to have the chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee in the House of Representatives. That's the first time in history, by the way, that Connecticut has had somebody with the gavel at the Appropriations Committee, and she did a good job with FY22. IMLS has been sort of flat funded year in and year out, and Rosa made sure that it got a boost in the FY22 budget, and she's already hard at work in the FY23 budget in terms of, I'm sure, making sure that priority, again, it's really wonderful to have her there. I cannot tell you how different it is, to have a neighbor and friend and somebody who really cares about this stuff, in that position. What Rosa has also done is that she's reinstituted earmarks. We're not supposed to call them earmarks. We're supposed to call them community projects, but they're earmarks. And, I think it's been a great thing for, connecting issues and problems in member districts is to, directly to the appropriations process, and not just doing it via, formula funds or competitive grants, which is, what basically has been the case since earmarks were eliminated in 2010. And, again, libraries are more than, eligible. The only ineligible entities for community projects with the new system that Rosa has sent up is for-profit entities. Again, one of the, and frankly, that's really smart, because one of the reasons why earmarks got such a bad name was because, there were earmarks for private corporations and private entities. Rosa's is limited only, limits community projects only to nonprofits and public sector, public entities. So, for FY23, we already have, every member has submitted their 15 community project requests. And one of our requests this year in Eastern Connecticut is a request from Canterbury's Public Library for, basically constructing a child's play and learning center. Again, Canterbury is one of those really small towns with like almost no tax base. And, projects like that are, obviously pushed to the bottom of the pile there. And, I sort of offer that as an example. I'll probably regret it, knock on wood, if I'm reelected in next year's budget cycle, we'll get flooded with, but honestly, that's what the community project reinstatement is all about, is really giving entities that sometimes feel like they really struggle through the normal, competitive grant process with IMLS or, formula funding or whatever, to be able to just pick up, to go to their member of Congress and put in a request. It is not, a slam dunk. You really, there is a vetting process and a scrubbing process that you have to satisfy with each, member office. But again, by and large, the Appropriations Committee certainly views projects like the one that I just described from Canterbury as well within the accepted scope of, the community projects program. So, again, it's there are some individual, bills at the Education and Labor Committee, the library construction program, which is similar to the school legislation that we tried to get through in the Build Back Better legislation, which obviously is kind of very much in a holding pattern right now. We're 5 months out from an election. It's unlikely that I think you're going to get sudden movement on the library construction proposal in 2022. That's just my honest political opinion. But the bottom line is, this whole sort of process of trying to get Washington to provide help, it's a long game, and you just got to be persistent and you just got to stay at it. This morning, I was up in Enfield, Connecticut. We just announced a new grant for a train station, which hasn't existed up there for 35 years. We've been working on that for 15 years in terms of trying to get that federal grant. It was very exciting. It was in the Thompsonville section of Enfield. And one fun fact that came out, and it involved a library and a museum, was that the site where the new train station is going to get built in Thompsonville, which used to be right adjacent to the old train station, was where Harry Truman stopped in 1948 during the whistle stop tour of the election. He came right through Connecticut and made a bunch of whistle stops, and including in Thompsonville rather. We had a lot of fun talking about that this morning. There are pictures of that, which I could send over to Ellen if somebody really wants to geek out on all this stuff. But the pictures are actually now the property of the Truman Library in Missouri. And, it's just one of those parts of not just American history, but frankly, Connecticut history that, kind of bubbled up today. And a good reminder about how important all of your work really is. So again, thank you for the chance to stop by and say hello. Again, you have our contact information. Julia, listened in, and definitely really want to push out that PSLF opportunity out there for folks, because it was a very discouraging and demoralizing time that occurred, sadly, right when PSLF was supposed to go into operation under Secretary DeVos. But it is better days right now, and people hopefully can take advantage of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. All right. This is the fun time of the meeting where we have the ceremonial passing of the gavel, which, like I said, oops, I don't know what I did, is the popsicle stick. So I can say a few words, and the only words I will say is, these last few years have reminded me of the Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. I certainly became chair not expecting to have the hiring of a new executive director for CLC be on my plate, but it's been a hoot. And I'm so glad we have Ellen on board. She's just been amazing, and CLC continues to amaze me at just how quickly they pivot and respond to rapidly changing circumstances. So, and I just want to say thank you to everyone on the board and to members, and, look up and whatever. So at this point, I pass things over to Kim, and she can say a few words or not as she chooses.
Sure. Thank you, Jason. And I want to just say thank you, Jason, for this past year, for being there for CLC, for lending your ear and your ideas and your guidance. As you mentioned, we hired a new executive director, and we also established a strategic plan. So it was a really big year, and I really appreciate your support. Personally, I'm really grateful that you led by example with using Robert's rules efficiently. I'm hoping that by this time next year, I will have it all memorized. In the meantime, I took really good notes. And I'm really excited to take on this role in the next year. For those of you who don't know, which let's be honest, is probably most of you, I relocated to Connecticut in 2018 from Portland, Oregon, where I had worked for a library district. So as I'm sure you can imagine, coming from an area where there are large library systems and then coming to Connecticut where there are 169 individual libraries, I wasn't sure where I fit in. But I was so lucky to be hired by the Durham Public Library as their assistant director. And I attended my first CLA conference in 2019, and there was a session there, and it was called Telling Your Library's Story, and it was sponsored by CLC, and it was Amanda Stern and Julie Ulo-Maderos. And we learned how to tell our library story. And I loved that program so much. I loved the idea that we could collaborate and share, that I said, I want to be involved in what they're doing. And as it turns out, around that time, there was an opening for a board position. Now, no one actually said this to me, but I think they were all probably like, who is that person? We have no idea who that woman is, but I guess we'll let her be on one of our committees. So I think I joined a committee in the fall of 2019, and then I was invited onto the board 2 years ago in June of 2020. So I have been a part of the CLC board for the last 2 years, and I am really excited to take on this role, especially as we roll out our strategic plan and all of the ideas that Ellen has come up with so far. And I really look forward to supporting you all and the staff and Ellen in your leadership of CLC. So I look forward to the coming year. So I think my first order of business is to adjourn this meeting.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So if there's no other business, do I have a motion to adjourn the 2022 CLC annual meeting?
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Elizabeth. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Our meeting adjourns at 5:05 p.m.
Excuse
Thank
me,
you all so much for attending.
can I just hear briefly, I'm sorry, who made the motion and the second?
Elizabeth Lane made the second.
I made the motion. I'm Doug Lord from the CH Booth Library in Newtown.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Doug.
If the board members could just hang around for a few minutes. We just have a little bit of business. It should not take very long.